So today we're doing a deep dive into something pretty interesting happening in a small Michigan village. It's really a story about a community deciding, actually for the first time ever, how it wants to grow.
Right. We're looking at the Village of Newberry. They've just adopted their very first zoning ordinances ever.
Wow.
Our source for this is mostly an article from the Newberry News. It's dated April 29th, 2025. And our mission today is to figure out what these rules are, why now, and what it might mean for Newberry and maybe other towns like it.
Okay. First ever zoning ordinances.
Yeah.
In 2025. That feels like a pretty big deal. So what exactly did the Newberry Village Council approve? What are we talking about here?
So on April 15th, just recently, the council signed off on the draft ordinance. This came from their planning commission.
Okay.
Now, these rules, they're all about how land can be used, what can be built where, but they don't kick in right away. They're set to become effective later this year, December 2025.
December. Okay.
And yeah, you're right. It's historic for them. First time ever having formal zoning.
It really does feel like a major turning point. So why now? I mean, after all this time without them, what's the real driver behind this change?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the article points to a couple of key things. A really big one is grants.
Ah, money.
Well, yeah. Apparently, having zoning makes them eligible for certain types of funding they just couldn't get before.
Okay, that makes sense.
And it also lets Newberry join the Redevelopment Ready program that's run by the state of Michigan.
Redevelopment Ready. What does that involve?
It's basically a state program that gives communities like a framework and support, helps them attract investment, plan development more strategically, and zoning is often a key piece of that.
So it's funding, but also about positioning themselves better for the future, getting into these state programs. Makes sense. But this wasn't like a sudden thing, right? They didn't just wake up one day and decide this.
Oh, definitely not. No, the article makes it clear the Planning Commission worked on this for almost 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah, nearly 3 years crafting these ordinances. So it was quite a deliberate process, involved a lot of input, too.
Right, I saw mention of a zoning steering committee. Who was on that? What did they do?
So that committee was made up of local community members, volunteers.
Okay.
They took the first draft, which was actually put together by a consulting firm, Beckett and Rader, and they reviewed it, kind of prepared it for the Planning Commission to then take over and refine. So very much meant to be collaborative.
And I bet there were some disagreements or concerns. The article mentions a public hearing that got quite a bit of attention.
Yes. That was back in November 2024. And yeah, sounds like it was pretty lively. About 30 residents showed up.
Yeah.
And many had concerns. Enough concerns, actually, that the village council decided to table the adoption then, hold off on voting.
Really? So they hit pause because people spoke up.
Seems like it. Yeah, suggests, real community engagement, but maybe also some hesitation about what these changes would mean.
So what did they do then? How did they address those concerns people raised at the hearing?
Well, they took a couple of steps. First, they put information about the ordinance right in everyone's monthly utility bills.
Oh, okay. Direct mail.
Pretty direct, yeah. And second, and this is important, they actually revised the draft ordinance based on that feedback.
Ah, so they listened and made changes.
Exactly. It shows they were trying to incorporate what the community was saying.
Okay, so one thing that apparently caused some anxiety was this term, non-conforming. What's that about? Why were people worried?
Yeah, that's a super important piece. Non-conforming basically means a property that was totally legal before the new rules, but doesn't quite meet the new zoning standards. The fear, probably for a lot of homeowners or business owners, was, oh no, do I suddenly have to tear something down or make expensive changes?
Which sounds terrifying if you're not expecting it, but that's not actually how it works, is it? The article seemed clear on that.
Exactly right. This is where the whole grandfathered in concept comes into play. It's a legal principle.
Right.
If your property was legal when it was established, before the new ordinance, it's generally protected. Zoning in Michigan and, well, most places isn't retroactive.
So you don't have to go back in time and fix things.
Right. And the village manager, Allison Watkins, was quoted saying exactly that. She said, if you are not in compliance with the zoning ordinance, you are considered non-conforming and you are not required to add or take away from your current property.
Okay, that's a crucial clarification. That probably helped calm some nerves.
I would imagine so. Clarity is key with something like this.
So were there specific changes made because of this feedback loop? The article mentioned something about accessory buildings and storage containers, those big metal ones.
Yes. The storage container issue is actually a perfect example of how feedback changed the outcome. The very first draft, it proposed banning those containers entirely, everywhere in the village.
Whoa, a total ban.
Yeah. But then a local business owner, someone whose property was zoned for light industrial use, spoke up. They relied on those containers.
Makes sense for certain businesses.
Totally. So they raised concerns about how that ban would impact their operations.
And the village listened.
They did. They created an exception. So now using those containers is allowed, but specifically in commercial and light industrial zones.
Okay, a compromise.
Right. With conditions, though, they have to be kept in good repair, can't block sidewalks or driveways, that sort of thing.
Fair enough. What about residential properties? Can homeowners still use them?
It's a bit different there. For new containers, permanent ones, no, that won't be allowed on residential lots once the rules are in effect.
Okay.
But, and this goes back to the non-conforming thing, if a homeowner already has one before the ordinance starts, it's grandfathered in, it can stay.
Non-conforming again.
Exactly. And they also allowed for temporary use, like those moving pods. You can have one for up to 14 days in a residential area for loading or unloading.
Okay, so it feels like they tried to balance setting new standards with, the reality of how things are already set up.
Seems that way. Trying to find that middle ground.
Now, passing the ordinance is one thing, but actually making it work, that takes administration, right? Setting up the systems.
Oh, absolutely. And the village manager, Allison Watkins, she was clearly thinking about that. She specifically asked for at least 6 months before full implementation. That's why it starts December 15th.
Right, give them time to prepare.
Yeah, time to get all the forms ready, figure out the permitting process, get the physical documents printed, all the nuts and bolts of actually administering zoning.
And they need qualified people too, I assume. You can't just hand this off to anyone.
Correct. And they're addressing that. Allison Watkins herself actually went and got trained. She's now a certified master citizen planner and a certified zoning administrator.
Wow, she got certified herself.
Yep. And the article mentioned their ordinance officer, Cliff Fawcett, will likely get certified too. Watkins stressed that having a certified zoning administrator is actually required to even have zoning.
So they're dotting the I's and crossing the T's on the implementation side.
Looks like it, taking the necessary steps.
The article also briefly touched on some other village business, public hearings about lead pipes and taxes. Does that give us any extra context?
I think it does, yeah. It just paints a fuller picture. Adopting zoning is a big deal, but it's happening alongside other major village responsibilities.
Like infrastructure and finances.
Exactly. They've got this state mandate for lead service line replacement. They've got budget hearings. It shows that zoning is one important piece, but it fits into this larger picture of managing and developing the community.
Okay, let's pull this all together then. Newberry, Michigan. Entering a new era. First ever zoning. Driven largely by wanting grants and access to state programs, right?
Right, those seem to be the main catalysts.
The process took time, nearly 3 years, involved community input, especially around that non-conforming issue, which they seem to have addressed by grandfathering existing properties.
Yes, and that feedback directly led to changes, like the compromise on storage containers.
And they're putting the administrative pieces in place, getting people certified, allowing time for setup before it goes live in December.
Exactly. Covers the key points.
So what's really interesting here, as you mentioned, is how this small village's story kind of reflects bigger trends.
It really does. This tension between, planning for the future and respecting what people already have on their property, that's a conversation happening everywhere. Newberry's just a very concrete example of it.
So for you listening, why does this matter? Well, if your own community is thinking about new zoning or changing existing rules, Newberry's experience offers some lessons.
Definitely. Like how vital clear communication is, especially with potentially confusing terms like non-conforming. Getting that definition right and explaining it clearly seems huge.
Yeah, and it shows the power of actually listening to residents and incorporating their feedback. It might lead to compromises, like with the storage containers, but potentially builds more buy-in.
And it also highlights how sometimes these big local policy shifts are really kicked off by external factors, like the need for grant money or wanting to join state programs.
Which brings us to maybe a final thought to chew on. As more places adopt or update zoning, what really are the most crucial things for making it work?
Yeah.
How do you balance effective planning with keeping residents on board?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What's that perfect blend of clear rules, flexibility, and really truly addressing people's specific worries? It's something to keep an eye on for sure as communities keep evolving.